Hi everybody, welcome to the Woodworking Wisdom Workshops. My name's Colwin. We're here today to start looking at platter turning. So if you've been watching this series, you would have seen Jason earlier on in the week doing a nice fine bowl. Well, today we're going to change things slightly, only in the hold method, how we reverse afterwards, that sort of thing. Now, what Jason was making was a fine bowl as a centerpiece, something to look at. This is going to be a functional piece. Platters generally bring the food to the plate, so they differ from plates for that reason. So they generally are a lot bigger. They can be a little bit more decorative, and they not only can transport food to your plate, they can be something to look at on a table to hold decorations, all those sorts of things. Now, obviously, differ from bowls. Bowls are going to be a little bit deeper. They hold more food, that sort of stuff. So in terms of the actual mathematics behind it, I have no idea. A platter, for me, is something decorative, big, wide rim, that sort of thing. The timber today is a bit of an unusual one. It's going to cause me a few problems, so I'm making excuses before I start. It's a bit of monkey puzzle. From a big old tree, there is one of the hard branch sections left in it. Because of that, if you watch this, you get a very unbalanced piece of timber. I'm going to turn the lathe on just to show you this a minute. We're going to have to vary our speed a little bit. So I'm there at, where we are, 300, 400, 5, 6, 7, 8. There, it's beginning to wobble that lathe far too much. So that's my point where I'm going to stop 600 revs. So at this stage, that's as fast as I can go. We'll take off some of the meat of the piece of timber, the bowl blank, and then see if we can get the speed up a little bit quicker. Okay. So usual thing, you know what you're doing. We've got Craig on the cameras. We've got Ben on the questions. Ask as many questions as you can. It really helps me. So like I say, you know what you're doing by now. So here we go, straight into it. So monkey puzzle. I have a sort of a love-hate relationship with monkey puzzle. I like it. I don't like it. It depends on the piece. This one should cause us a few problems, but we can't have it easy all the time, I guess. All I'm going to do to start with, this is a 1/2 inch or 12 mil bowl gouge. I'm going to drag cut the surface. We're going to get things nice and smooth, nice and circular instead of oscillating around all over the place. I have a friend who owns a timber mill, and he hates cutting monkey puzzles because as soon as the saw tip hits the big knots, it's a sudden jolt, and he can actually take tips off the saw blade. So it's quite a problematic timber, but can be stunning if used in the right way. Now you can hear that hard knot coming around. It's really quite dense. Look, there it is. But it's going to give us some really, really interesting features to this bowl. We're going to sand and seal it. Well, no, we're going to sand and oil this one, actually. That's going to give some real color to the piece. Right, there we are. So we're going to use a foot. We're going to use a sacrificial foot. You've seen me do a sacrificial foot before. In this case, it's going to be, I'm just going to look at the C jaws. Looks a little bit too small for me. I'm going to go up in size. So I'm going to go to the A+. Yes, Ben, you got a question?
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Our first question is from David. He's asking, which is the preferred abrasive? The RB406 Ultimate or the Abranet, and your reasons why?
Okay, for me, the RB406 is my favorite. There is a bit of a price difference foremost, so I can buy a meter long RB406 less than I could the Abranet, for instance. I find it a little bit harder wearing. However, the Abranet will be better where you've got wet timber, where you're using it on acrylics, polyesters, all that sort of thing, because it taps out easier. So any timber that's very gummy, that clogs the paper up, go with Abranet. You'll be able to tap it out and it'll stay cooler for longer. All right.
Frederick's saying he's just tried to turn some monkey puzzle and he just had to give up. Too much tear out. He couldn't get rid of it.
Oh, dear. Okay. Well, let's see how we go then. If I get tear out, let's look at how we can deal with it. I'm hoping this piece isn't going to give me too many problems. It is one of those timbers that you get a good piece and a bad piece. So it might be that. You might get lucky. You might be unlucky. Generally, if you get too much tear out, then it'll be a shear cut. It could be dropping the bowl gouge down. It could be using a shear scrape, for instance, all of those things. Maybe sanding seal at first, then do a final cut, resharpen your gouge. All of those things coupled together, and that should help. Yes, Ben.
And then Cliff's got a question about the button jaws. What's the minimum thickness you would use for a bowl?
Oh, no, I think you asked that, and right at the end of of Tuesday's demo. We didn't quite catch that one in time. The minimum thickness is going to depend on the timber. If you're talking about the material thickness, it will very much depend on the timber. So you get a good dense timber, you can go right down to sort of, I don't know, a 3 mil, an eighth of an inch, for instance. If you've got a very soft one, then it'll have to be a little bit thicker than that, maybe up to sort of 4 or 5 mil. So yeah, well, it will depend a little bit. Yes, Ben.
And George is asking, how sharp are the chisels?
How sharp are the chisels? Yeah. As sharp as I can possibly make them, George. It depends on that, and that's the honest truth. I will always go into a bowl with the gouges as sharp as I can get them. For me, that means sharpening on the tormek and then honing afterwards. Not only will that give you a much better cut, but to make the cutting edge last longer. A sharp edge will last longer than a dull edge. And what I usually say is keep the edge sharp rather than wait for it to go blunt. Okay, so keep resharpening all the time. All right, for the minute, crack on. So, okay, parting tool, because what I want to do is just define my foot. So, and this really is too slow at the moment. I need to get some speed up. So I'm gonna lose some weight from this bowl. I've got to lose some weight from this bowl first. Yeah, you can hear. I hope you can hear that knot or branch. Do you know, apart from that, the timber's actually cutting quite nicely. Just notice where my hand is. My hand's where it is because I'm pulling, but my hand is shielding my face from shavings flying up. So they're hitting my hand and falling to the ground. So at this point, it's not pretty. You can see all the turning marks. Actually, Frederick, it's not tearing too bad. They've got a few little tears here, but we're going to do a finishing cut on this in a minute. So keep watching for that. That should take those away. Let's carry on now and take some of that uneven edge away. Maybe a question to answer before it even gets asked is how often to sharpen, and this is the sort of thing. A bowl like this, really, you're going to be sharpening your gouge 3 to 4 times before you've finished. I've got the luxury of having several gouges behind me, so I just go to a sharp gouge. Saves you time as well. Yes, Ben.
So a question from Dewey Shed. What's a great lathe for beginners who want to upgrade from a mini lathe?
From a mini lathe, so I'm guessing you mean a floor standing machine. It depends on how many hours you want to throw at this, whether you want it to be a hobby that you're going to maybe do a little bit of turning once or twice a week. If that was the case, I'd go for the Craft 1100 because that's a full-size machine. You've got 1100 between centers. You've got a 14-inch bowl capacity. Sorry to mix my imperial metric, but yeah, 14-inch bowl capacity. It's a truly big lathe. It has mechanical variable speed as well, so you've got good variation there. But if you're willing to go that bit more and go to a trade machine, there is not a better machine for the price and for its size than this one. This is the AT406. I've had many lathes in my turning life, and this is the best one that I've had at that price. So this is, for me, this is the bee's knees. Okay, I've upped the speed a little bit. I've lost a fair amount of weight from this bowl. we're going to stop the machine. I'm going to just clean up the outside edge, so bringing the tool rest around. Make sure nothing's touching the tool rest. They can go back on, and I'm going to skim that way. I'm going to skim away from this edge. I want this to be my clean one. Anything that breaks out here, we're going to reshape that in a moment. So stop and have a look. I think that's got it. I think we've got a solid edge. We have, now I'm going to make the most. Look at this already. We've got some real color coming through from that branch. I want to retain that. So we're going to have a nice decorative rim to this bowl. So really quite a big rim. So we're going to look at this to hold something. Say if you're into collecting wood and fruit, that sort of thing, maybe it could be a bowl that you could use for storing those sorts of things. Or just something to look at, to be quite honest. I'm going to give it a fairly wide base. With a very faint OG as well. So I'm going to up the speed now. It's letting me go faster. We're up to we're up to 800 revs. I was about to say we're up to 900. We never quite got there. Yes, Ben.
So Frederick's got a question. He says, not for now, but later perhaps. Is there any wood that's not suitable for skew work?
Don't think so. No, nothing that I've come across really. If you're thinking about practicing, I would go for something like a softwood. But that joinery grade pine that I tend to use a lot, got a little bit of it here. This I use when I'm teaching, and for practice pieces, we'll use this. This is referred to as redwood at the timber merchant, but it's a benchtop joinery grade of pine. It's got a real heavy pine scent to it, and it's quite a dense material, but it turns really crisply off the lathe, off the tool. So I would go with something like that. If you're practicing, you know, the best timber's free timber, but in terms of how they perform off the chisel, something like that would be good. Yes, Ben.
And Panaos has got a question here. When he turns ready bowl blanks brought online, because they're very dry, he gets more dust rather than chips when hollowing, etc.
Yeah.
Will it help to wet the wood a little, maybe with a spray bottle, or is there any other tips or techniques which may help?
No, not really. The good dust extraction is the key. The reason I don't have the dust extractor running permanently is just so you guys can hear me. It just makes it a little bit more of a pleasurable experience for you guys and for me, to be honest. When I'm at home, my dust extractor is on full all the time. So it never gets turned off when I'm turning. It's not just needed when you're sanding, it's got to be there when you're turning as well. Kiln dried timbers are going to be very dusty compared with air dry timbers because the level of dryness is greater for kiln dried. I think they go down to around about 12%, if not even drier. This is air dried, so you're not going to get as much dust, but you will get dust. You know, that is part of it. Another reason for getting dust off the tool is if the tool isn't quite sharp enough, so maybe resharpen the tool again. But there's no point in putting water on it. The minute you start the lathe, the water's going to shoot off. You're just going to get gummed up everywhere, so I wouldn't bother with that. The only time I would use water is if I'm sanding with an exotic timber, want to keep that timber cool, then I'll turn the lathe down really slow and sand with water then.
And Grandad P is asking, is there anything constructive you can use the shavings for rather than going in the bin?
Here, as a company, we turn them into briquettes. So they're then used on log burners and patio heaters, that sort of thing. You'll get a lot of people saying, oh, you can use them for poultry, for animals and things like that. The only trouble is like us, all those animals have lungs, and the shavings that you buy from farm supplies or pet stores have been, all the dust has been taken out of them. Ours haven't, so you've got to be quite careful. And also some timbers are toxic, so you've got to be careful with that. So we live in this area of Devon and Dorset. We live in quite a clay area, dug into the ground. It's quite good. Small amounts will compost down as well, but it helps to break the soil up if they're dug directly in. So that would be certainly my recommendation.
And then Cliff's got a question here. When you say sharpen the chisels 3 to 4 times for such a bowl, would that be all on the Tormek, or once on the Tormek and others using diamond cards, etc.?
So I would go to the Tormek every time on the bowl gouges. If I was demonstrating to a group, then I wouldn't. I would use a diamond card just for convenience, and it means that I can stay by the lathe, sort of thing. If you wanted to, absolutely. But I find that just running to the Tormek, it takes little steel away. It's quite a quick process. And if you have your Tormek situated close to you, again, it's done as quickly. So,
Woodwork Learners, he turned a pen recently, and it's come out and it's an ellipse or an egg shape. What pen mandrel? He was looking for a new pen mandrel. What one would you suggest?
I would always go. Well, you're probably better answering that. Ben, the pen's here doing the question. Everybody, he's probably the man to answer the questions. I would go with the.
So I would go with the Evolution, the compression mandrel.
That's the word I was looking for. Compression mandrel. Yeah, brilliant.
Really great. So it takes the pressure off the far end of the mandrel, so you're not using a live center from the tailstock to support it. It's actually hollow, the live center. So it takes all the pressure off that bar, and it stops it from potentially warping or bending. Which
could be the reason that you're getting an ellipse on your pens. Okay, so something like that, direct pressure on the pen itself. Okay, well, let's crack on. And time is flying. So let's see if I can turn that lathe speed up. We haven't actually lost that much more timber since the last time I tried, so a little bit more. I'll start getting the rough shape. And what I usually say is don't let the size of the bowl blank dictate the shape of your bowl. So if you need to lose depth from the bowl blank, do it. You know, I know you spent money on a bowl blank and so you want to use it all, but sometimes that will be at the detriment of the design of the piece. Actually, this one's going to work quite nicely in this size, so I'm quite happy with that. There we are. So I'm happy-ish with the shape. We're going to refine it slightly in a minute. We're going to have a decorative band on the outside edge. That tool is pretty much getting there now in terms of being a little bit dull, so I'm going to put a little flat where my base is to be. One thing I always forget when I'm doing this is putting a point in center. We're going to use a push plate to clean this up in a minute, and I need to have a center point, so let's pop our center point in right there. There we are. So we've got a very coarse bowl. I would love to get a bowl gouge on this now and clean it up, so we're going to go with a 3/8 gouge. Sharp one. Okay, that one there. And we're going to start that push. So a little bit of a concave where we start. Using the bevel now, we're pushing up the length of the tool. The bevel sliding. Because the bevel is in constant contact, you get that lovely smooth finish. I'm controlling the curve by moving the handle in the direction I want the curve to flow. Nice and gentle off that outside edge. You want to avoid any breakout. There we are. Let's just stop and have a look and see if we've got a clean finish. So there's no tears there, so I'm happy with that. We're just going to put a little decorative ring around that edge. So I'm just going to pick up the curve. More like a shadow ring, really. It's just a little feature. There we are. That's all it is. Just gives a nice little shadow, gives a little bit of, it sort of breaks the monotony of that single curve. And I'll crisp it up with the Colwin Way Signature Skew, of course. There we are. So just a nice little rim there. You can do whatever you want, of course. If it's a very plain, bland piece of timber, you can add some lines, add some decoration. This is going to be sacrificial, this foot. It's going to disappear. Okay, once we finish the bowl, I'm going to reverse it round again and take that away. So I'm not going to bother sanding that. It is nice and clean, he says. I'm just looking at it now and watching it wobble around. So let me just give that a bit of a tickle with the gouge, bevel rubbing. And there's no reason, if you don't want to take that foot away, don't. No, keep it on there. Absolutely. I tend to use them as hold points and only that. There we are. Just remembered the jaw I'm using has a dovetail internally, so I want to put that dovetail in. And now we're going to start sanding. Again, let's just have one last look before we sand. It's going to be a real feature on the top here. This is lovely. So I'm just going to put a very slight radius on this as we sand. But it's nice and smooth, so I don't have to start too coarse. We'll probably start, I say that, we'll start with 100 grit on the hand sanding, but we'll start with a 180 on the rotary. So, yes, Ben, sorry.
So Panos would like to know, what was the original blank size and what are the dimensions of that sacrificial foot?
So the sacrificial foot is sized for the jaw that I'm using. And in this case, I'm using quite a large dovetail foot. This is known as our dovetail, the 100 mil internal, A plus, 100 mil internal. The diameter of the blank, I think it was about 14 inches. Nope, sorry, 12 inches. All right, so 300 mil. Right, dust extraction is going on. Nice and close. If you're getting dust clouding the workshop, turn the lathe speed down. Position the dust extractor so that you don't get hit with it. And I wouldn't be like this normally. I wouldn't have no dust mask on. It's only so you can hear what I'm saying. Unfortunately, in demonstrations, we have little choice. I would always have my full face visor on with flowing air. The APF 10 is my chosen one. There we are. So this initial abrasive, this 100 grit, is got to take away all of the sanding marks, all of the turning marks and any tears that there may be. Once you've done that, then you can go, travel through all the others quite briskly. And I'm still only turning at 800. It's not letting me go any faster. That's done it. Oh no, there's just a couple of tears here. Yeah, so it's quite, even though that's only 800 revs, it was turning quite nicely off the tool. There we are. So that was 100. Let's go to 150. Yeah, whilst I'm sanding, I just wanted to talk to you about a couple of other things happening. If you're really in the turning, you're looking at events to look at. We're taking part next weekend in the AAW, the American Association of Wood Turning's online interactive seminar. We're doing the 2 days. It's on the Saturday and the Sunday, 17th and 18th. So if you fancy looking at that, there's some great demonstrators there, as well as trade stands. You can go around, look at loads of demonstrations. Registration's online now. It's open, so you can sign up for that if you want to. That's the American Association of Wood Turners. There we are. So that was a 150. Right, we're good. We're good. So let's go to, what I'll do, Ben, is I'll just finish sanding and I'll come back to you, all right? So if you've got questions, guys, we're going to come back to them. I'll just get this extractor off a minute. And as much as I want to turn that lathe up, it won't let me at the moment. So rotary sander. So we are always using the rotary sander and the hand sanding in conjunction with each other, because the grit is running in different directions, or rather the sanding is running in different directions. They cancel each other out. There we are. That should now have got rid of all my heavy 100 marks, or a little bit around here we need to get rid of. There we are. That's done. I can now change that to a 240. And we'll go to 240 also on our hand sanding. And we'll just alternate around now. So I'll do a hand sand, then a rotary sand, hand sand, rotary sand. And each time they're going to cancel the other one out. There we are. The rotary. We're going to sanding seal and wax this. I could equally oil it. But I think I've done a lot of oiling with you, so we'll look at a sanding sealer. So now 400 grit. Hand sand first. And take those hand sanding marks away with your rotary. And then if you have any rotary sanding marks left from the 400 grit, then you can just, a little bit of 600 would do the job. Let's just have a check and see where we are with that in a minute. And that's looking really nice. I am going to go to the 600. It has left a few little scuff marks there. So I think it was Frederick was asking about tears. You can just see this white haze here. These are tears. And you can localize those. If you're spending ages trying to get rid of things like that, you can go over with, let's go with a smaller one actually. You can go over in your cordless with the rotary sanding pads and spend a bit of time. I do this all the time on natural edges. You can spend a bit of time actually localizing your sanding and take out that area. And once you've done that, you've got rid of the tears, then you can start blending in. Go over it again with a 600. For instance, maybe a tip, it may be the thing that sorts that out for you, Frederick. There we are. Okay, Ben, let's go with these questions then.
Okay, so we've got a few questions tallied up. So Dave's asking, what are your thoughts on not putting any finish on the platter, which would be constantly used for food?
Depends on the timber at the end of the day. So chopping boards generally only have an oil on or a citrus oil, that sort of thing. But Granny's old beech chopping boards never used to have anything on, and they develop their own sort of patina. They'll all grey at the end of the day. Once they get a little bit of age on it, they will die down a little bit. But as long as the timber is safe, it's a known timber that's not going to poison anybody, then absolutely no problem at all. You're going to get staining. With any wooden utensils, they do, that lovely shine disappears. They get used and they get they'll go matte in finish. And like I say, develop their own sort of semi-shine, but no problem at all.
And then Frederick's asking about the monkey puzzle again. He said his blank had very hard growth rings interweaved with very, very soft ones. Is that blank the same, or has he been unlucky?
I suspect there's a little bit of decay crept in, so I suspect it's probably been down a little while. The soft, it will deteriorate quite quickly, monkey puzzle. It doesn't withstand the weather. So if it's had a winter, you probably find it started just to decay a bit. So a little bit of unluckiness there. But if you want to, just put some neat sanding sealer on those soft areas, let it fully set. So give it a good hour and then return it with a nice sharp chisel. See what happens. I bet you it'll be a bit different.
And Nathan would like to know, for the C-jaws, for an external foot, do you need a dovetail?
No. So C-jaws have a tooth that they bite with. And that's designed, is like a gripper almost. So as long as you're not wanting to have that foot unmarked, then that's a really good way of holding. That's a way that I use all the time, certainly on things like vase shapes, goblets, or those sorts of things before parting off. So no, absolutely not.
James is asking, well, he says he's got an oak bowl, but he was going to highlight the grain using a liming wax. Should he still put a sanding seal on it first or not? And also, should he sand up to 600 grit, or will that stop the liming wax working?
No, not at all. So yeah, absolutely, you can put a sanding sealer on, wipe it off, and then sand again. Then you will need to clean that grain out. So you use an airline or brush, something like that. Clean the grain out, because the liming wax needs to fill those pores. Sanding sealer won't fill the pores. It will stop the nap of the grain rising up. So no, you go with your sanding sealer, wipe it off, sand it back, wipe the grain out, and then apply your wax.
Pete's asking, is the rotary sander turning under power, or does it just rotate by friction?
Friction. Yeah, no power in that one. Literally, it's running. The bowl is making it turn. So the faster you turn the bowl, the faster it will sand.
And Tom's just asking, what hand sander are you using?
This is the Axminster DELUXE hand sander. So it comes with 2 of the 75mm pads and 2 of the 50mm pads as well. Nice little spanner to undo it. So it's a really, really useful bit of kit, that one. And a spanner to articulate the head as well. One of the better ones that are out there. Nice soft pad, that one. All right, Ben, for the minute?
Yep.
So I'm just buffing in the wax. What I was doing there, I applied the sanding sealer. We then used the web racks to apply the wax. Give it a little going over with that web racks, which is an abrasive material. And now I'm just buffing the shine onto the wax. The wax we were using there is the microcrystalline, the restoration wax. Microcrystalline restoration wax, really, really good one. It gives you that extra bit of sheen. It's got a bit of water inhibitor in it as well, so it's not going to be waterproof, but it's certainly fingerprint proof. Look at that lovely finish. Nice little glossy finish on that one. Doesn't have to be glossy, of course. If you don't want a glossy finish, maybe go to something like a general duty wax, so just a wood wax. So the Axminster wood wax, for instance, which comes in all different colors. The microcrystalline one has quite a lot of conulber in it, though, so you're going to get that nice shine. Right, so let's take that off. Let's reverse this one. Take the center out. Got my little hole there for reversing later as well, or center point. We're going to use the A+ jaws, just a little overhead of that. All right, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this bit here. Should be quite colorful. There we are. I'm going to keep the faceplate on there to use as a handle just while I put that on my chuck. And whilst I'm doing that, we're going to answer a question from Ben.
So Sam's got a question here. Any idea why a newish Danish oil stored in a jar would go cloudy and then solid? Is there too much air to oil in the jar?
It's going to be air's going to have to have gotten in there somehow. Yeah, absolutely. The only reason it will go off is because it's not sealed anymore. It will go cloudy as it dries if it's in a big lump. Yes. So that's something's broken the seal.
And then Jenny's asking, can you clean the pads of the rotary sander, or do you have to buy new ones?
If you're talking the soft pads, so if you're talking those, that's a Velcro type material, so it's the hook. If you accidentally forget to put that on and then start sanding, you will take that off. It'll melt straight away. So then that's basically, you throw that away, or buy some more Velcro hook and glue it on again. In terms of these are sanding discs, so you can treat them in the same way you would any sanding disc. And if you can get it spinning, you can use a declogger on it, which is a little almost like a rubber block, which you could clean out. Be quite honest, you buy them in packs of 10. I forget myself how much they are, but they're not a huge amount. But do look after them. You know, resinous timbers will cause you issues. And like I say, you can use them with water, use them with wax to stop that resin from gunking up the abrasives, especially on the finer ones. Yeah, so that'll be a good tip to keep them free from resin. Yes, Ben?
So a question from Cliff. What grade of web racks is being used?
So that was the grey, which is the equivalent to 4/0 wire wool.
And are you doing, question from James. Are you doing any more videos on colouring and embellishing bowls and airbrushing in the near future?
Hollowing.
Sorry, any more videos on colouring and embellishing bowls and airbrushing in the near future?
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to get into a lot of airbrushing and colouring. It's really my thing. Because I like to spread what we're doing. I don't tend to do it every single week, but we've got, dare I say it, one of Craig's favourite seasons coming up. Christmas will be coming. I know it's summer, but as makers, we got to start making stuff to get it in the shops to sell it. So this is our time, really. Christmas is just around the corner. Craig shaking his head, but he loves it, really. So I use colour an awful lot. Nutcrackers, smokers, nativity scenes, Christmas pyramids, all those lovely things. Now, I know Chris is out there watching somewhere. I know Chris loves Christmas as well, one of our regulars. And so, yes, we will be using a lot of colour on those type of projects. Yes, Ben?
So James is asking about the sea jaws again. Aren't the external dovetail and only the internal... So the external on the sea jaws is a dovetail and the internal is a spigot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we just wanted to clarify that one.
Yeah, no, external is a dovetail. So just cleaning up that outside edge. And remember what I said, we're going to have a nice big rim on this one. It's not going to be flat though. So we're going to put a slight curve on it. And you can hear that knot coming around. Let's have a look. That's going to be a mess at the moment. Here's the color. This is what I'm looking for. And those lovely sort of shooting ripples coming away. So let's go back to a nice sharp gouge. I'm sure we can get a little bit more speed out of this now. There we are. Gone past that resonance point. So we've got some speed. Nice big feature rim. I want to show that off. That's looking really nice. Right, we'll start hollowing. I'm going to have a little bead just there again to create some shadow. Yes, Ben.
So again, we've got a few questions. There's lots of people keen on your airbrushing demos. They're all happy about that. Vicky's saying she's got a 12 by 1 inch blank. Is that too thin for a platter, safety wise?
No, not at all. I would say it's more a plate than a platter, if I'm honest. You know, that sort of size is perfect plate wise. If you're going to do that, very, very wide rims as well. So the rim should be around about 50% of the bowl, of the plate, sorry, because a plate is there to be used and food's going to be cut on it. So it needs to be ultra stable. So 50% of the bowl is base, and then you have a very slight curve coming up. Nice flat bottom to it as well. No, absolutely no. That's perfect size.
And Mary's asking, is the sanding sealer diluted with something?
My sanding sealer is 50% thinners. Now, this is Chestnut sanding sealer. Terry from Chestnut will say don't thin it, which he's absolutely right. If you want to stabilize material, don't thin it at all. The thing is, what I want from this sealer is to penetrate a long way. And also, if I put a lot of thinners in it, it will go in a long way. It will cut through wax and oil, and it'll set very quick. That's the other thing. So as standard, don't thin it. But for what I do, that penetration, I need it to be thinner. Yeah.
And Maria in Wales is asking, are you going to be doing any Christmas weebles?
See, I reckon we ought to. I reckon that would be a good one. A nice little Father Christmas weeble. What do you reckon, Craig?
Yay!
Yeah, well, maybe we can do one of those. You were saying about doing a tutor crossover, and I could teach Craig to make a Father Christmas weeble, or maybe a Grinch might be better suited. This is a smile on my face, not a grimace, despite the fact the bowl is giving me a lot of lip. It's not the most pleasurable timber I've turned. As Frederick knows by the sounds of it, what I'm doing is I'm just doing this outside edge first. I can leave all this strength and stability there for the minute. I'm getting my thickness right. The rim is actually taking that back OG curve out. So now I'm following the convex curve of the outside with the main part of the bowl. Going to stop and have a look, and whilst I've got some strength in the piece as well, we're going to do that little bead. We've got a lot of depth to go yet though. There we are, that's enough. So we've got some strength in there in the bowl still, so I'll do that bead. We know what's coming. One of those skews. Just a nice little gentle scrape. It's a negative rake, and you can use both faces of it, of course, because it's ground the same on both sides. And what that does, a little bead like that, is throws a shadow. Okay, you get a lovely little shadow coming up from it. Frederick, your tearing that you were talking about is hitting me the little bit right there. So what I'm going to do is just take a gouge to that. So just to tickle that edge. That's enough. Okay, now we can take away the bulk of the center. So going to cut the side grain, not the end. So down toward the bowl. Now we're just flipping the gouge over. I'm using the bevel. Bevel's going to keep everything nice and smooth, nice and flat. Let's check our finish. See if we need to do anything. That's looking quite good, actually. Thickness is good. Again, just using that bevel just to iron out any lumps and bumps. And especially when you get to the very center point, just ease up a little bit. Don't take too big a cut in the center. You can tear the grain out if you do. I'm going to swap to a nice sharp gouge. What I'm looking for, what I don't like seeing, is what we call gravy bumps in the middle. You get those little gravy islands on plates. We don't want any lumps. We don't want any recesses either. No, look, there's a little bit of tearing there. You can get away with dropping the handle of the gouge and dragging back. You can use shear scraping as well to get rid of those. I think that should be all right, though. I don't think it's a significant enough tear to worry about. Drop the tool rest. Let's just try. That skimmed that out all the way a little bit better. Okay, we are ready to start sanding again. Put that chisel down there. Yes, Craig, Ben.
So Fuller's got a question about sanding. Since the surface speed increases with the radius, is there a rule of thumb relationship between the radius of the object and RPM, so as to avoid premature wear of the abrasive?
If there is, I don't know what it is. Whether that's my experience or what of making mistakes, but no, there probably is if we're honest. But like I say, I'm not sure. I don't know what it is. I, as an apprentice, as a production turner, was always taught to keep the speed the same regardless. When I then went on to start teaching, that was flipped. Turn the lathe speed down when you're sanding. The reason being, if you're speed turning, you sand everything full pelt at the same speed that you're turning at. It gets done quickly, but you move rapidly around the bowl. Your hands are moving all over. You're keeping the paper cool by doing that. When you're learning, when you're starting out, that is, that skill isn't there yet. So by turning the lathe speed down, you can concentrate on sanding rather than moving around, for instance. So protecting your paper by nursing it is probably better than dropping the lathe speed down to protect it. I think if you learn that skill of just being careful with your paper, not pressing hard, not keeping it in one place for too long, not overheating it, then you'll get a lot more out of your paper. Yes, Ben.
And Cliff's asking what screws were used and what was the recommendation for choosing the right size?
Wood spur I'm using here, but wherever you are in the world, whatever screws you can get, just go good quality ones. Don't go the big superstore cheapest as you can get own brand, because they'll go in okay, but when you go to unscrew them, they'll snap off in the bowl blanks. So go good quality ones. And I tend to go, if you've got a faceplate like this, so on this piece here, I use 4 of those holes, and I was into the timber 25 mil, so an inch into the timber, and I usually use a gauge 4.5, so 4.5 on these. That sort of size or more. And then the bigger you go, the bigger bowl bank you go, the bigger screws you go, to the point where if you're doing big stuff, you go to coach bolts. So actually where you ratchet them in and just put more of them in. Your whole points can't be compromised when you're turning big stuff. Right? Yes, Ben.
And James is saying he's been hitting the end of his gouge on the bed of the lathe when he's doing the inside of bowls. Is he doing something wrong, or does he just need a bigger lathe?
So that's the handle, I'm guessing. If the handle, and now if you've got a benchtop lathe, some of these smaller lathes, you will have an issue. Now, the tool companies, if they're making box sets of tools, purposely put short handle tools in the box because of the box. Now, for a benchtop lathe, that's ideal. So if you're going to buy tools, buy them in a set because they're shorter handled. However, if you're turning bigger bowls and things like that, you want the leverage, you want a bigger tool handle. What you're probably doing is dropping the handle through most of the cut, but then bringing it up to the center, and you're dropping it in that initial sweep. If you can maybe change that and cut more center line, or swivel the headstock round or move it up, so then your handle is over air as opposed to the bed of the lathe. One of those things should be a solution for you. Yes, Ben.
And Maria's asking, well, she's just got her SK100 with the pin jaws, and the jaws don't quite meet equal in the center.
Okay.
Is it the way that she's put them on, and is there a recommended way of tightening them? So
a quick solution there, Maria, should be just nip off the little bolts. So you have 2 on each of the jaws. Just slack them off slightly. Then wind the chuck up together until they close, and then retighten those bolts up, and you should find that they mesh up nicely. All right. Right, let's get some extraction going, and we'll sand this one. We're running low on time. So I'm just going to do a very quick job of sanding here. So this is what I'm talking about. We're moving quickly across the bowl. I'm not folding the paper over too many times. I'm feeling how hot it's getting, moving it round all the time, changing sides. If my fingers start to hurt, then the paper's going to start wearing prematurely. So my fingers are my temperature guide. Inside of bowls are going to be notoriously harder to finish than the outside. And you always have 2 areas. If I stop sanding now quickly to show you, you generally have 2 areas, one here, where we're cutting against the grain. So I'm just going to go a little bit more aggressive on my sanding, so that means a power sander. So I'm just going to get my little cordless drill with a disc. The other thing with the DELUXE sanders, of course, if you take that off, you can use it as a power sander in your drill, either cordless or mains. And then this isn't running with the lathe now. This is running against it under power. Have a quick look and see where those tears are, and I think we've got rid of them. So now we can compress. Oh, no, a little bit there. I was going to say now we can progress through. Just get rid of those. And for speed, I'm going to carry on in my power sanding. Let's have a look and see where we are. A little bit of 240 by hand. I probably want to spend probably about a further 20 minutes, half an hour on this finishing, just to get rid of all those little tears. But we're going to change the battery on our drill in a minute. Let's have a look. Thank you, Ben. There we are. We'll go over with 400. I'm going to put some sealer and some wax on. But I just want to reverse this for you, just quickly to show you how. I won't get it all completed, because I would like to spend a bit of time finishing it for you. We just don't have that, I'm afraid. But we'll turn that off. I want to go through the motions to show you exactly what we would do. You can see we've got some tears, okay? So I need to spend a little bit longer on that. But, you know, sanding the bowl's not going to be the best demonstration. So let me just, instead of putting a finish on, let me just go through what I would do to remove that foot now. So let's say we've got the same finish that we've got on the back, on the front. And we will have that once we've spent a bit of time. What I'll do is I'll finish it, and then in the next live, I'll show you the finished piece. Just want to get rid of those tears there, though. So what I would do now, and whilst I'm moving the lathe around, let me answer some questions that Ben's got. Yes, Ben.
So we've got a question here. How high should the lathe be in relation to the user?
To the user, general rule is elbow height to center height. So where you stand, elbow height there. If you put your elbow against the lathe, and that's roughly on your center point. I like my lathes to be a little bit higher than that. This one isn't. And the reason I like them higher, if I'm using things like hollowing tools, I want to get that handle underneath my arm, and I don't want to be crouching down too much, so I need it up a little bit higher so I can stand comfortably. All right. So, but the general rule is elbow height. That's a good guide. You stand next to your lathe, get your elbow near center, and that's where you should be. You know, we're adaptable people, so we can adapt to, you know, the odd inch here and there is fine. But if it's, you know, absolutely towering above you, you need to do something. Yes, Ben.
And Hamed's asking, are M2 or M42 metalworking cutting bars, do they perform like wood turning tools? He's asking this because he doesn't have access to quality tools near him.
So M42, so that's the steel. I mean, it depends on what that tool is. If you're talking metal turning tools, they'll cut like a carbide tool. And a carbide tool, let me give you a for instance. We can go overhead on that one, Craig. There's a carbide cutting tool. Easy Wood or another make of cutting tool that look very similar to metal cutting tools. However, what you probably won't have is the length of handle that all of these come with. So you'll have to do something about that. Handle's going to be high all the time when you're using one of these. So just be aware of that as well. But yeah, they'll come in all shapes and sizes. They are a scraper. They will scrape. So you know, that's another consideration. They're not a true cutting tool on wood anyway. Okay, so ring center would be used next in the tailstock. We all right there, Ben, for questions for the minute? Yeah, cool. Now, I've used this so many times in front of you. This is your faceplate ring, piece of plywood, and then on the back we got some router matting. Okay, router matting, something every turner should have. In fact, every woodworker should have. It's useful in so many ways. We cut it and put it on so many things. And it's a soft, non-slip surface. That's going to go on my faceplate, on my chuck, which is held on through the faceplate ring. I need my long chuck here a minute. Pop that on there. Again, long chuck here, really, really important piece of kit for this sort of thing. And for bigger bowls, you'll need a slightly longer reach. I've checked my head and tailstock meet up nicely, so we're in line. Now I can bring my tailstock up, add that onto center, lathe speed to 0. Now, in terms of tension, the best way to find tension on this to know that you're enough is just start trying to move that tailstock center. If that's really getting quite difficult to move, there's a lot of friction there, then you're tight enough. Make sure that's tight. Lock up your lever. Lathe speed starts at 0. Turn the machine on, and away you go. And I would now set up with a nice short tool rest. It's not going to get in my way. I'm going to turn a little bit this way because I'll change the grip for a C-jaw grip, so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. There we are. That's running at 1,000 revs. Nice small bowl gouge and a nice sharp one. Yes, Ben?
So a question from David. Is the thickness of the plywood which the router mat is attached to 12 mil?
This one is 12 mil, yes.
And is that a ring center in the tailstock for Maria?
It is a ring center, yeah. Standard ring center in there, Maria, because I don't want the center to sink in too far. It just gives me a little bit more stability. So there, this is all I would do. I'm going to resize this one for the C-jaw. Don't forget, I've said this before, you can go through the bottom of a bowl from this side equally as easily as you can from the other side. So just be a little bit careful, take your time. And this gives you the ability to change, reshape, or take away your foot on the bottom. There we are. We'll carry on with that. We'll sand it. When we got that little pip left where the center is, I take it off, put my rotary sanding head in the lathe via a chuck, and sand that little nib away, going down through the grades as normal. So let's answer a few more questions before we sign off for the day. Yes,
so
Ben.
just got one more here from James. Would the 406 lathe work on a wooden shed floor?
Yes. Yes. What you might find is that wooden shed floor is a little bit springy, a little bit bouncy. So put a footprint of maybe inch ply or 30 mil ply down to cover or to increase the span of your lathe. And that will help take away some of that springiness from you. I would also make it that you're stood on that plywood section as well. So make it quite big. You can feather the edges to stop it being a trip hazard, that sort of thing. But that would help spread the load and stop that sort of wobbliness that you get from sort of wooden shed floors. All right. Cool. Right then, so guys, I'm not going to finish that one. We've gone on quite a while today, but essentially that's it. So I would turn him around, take that foot away, sand away that little nib. But that's a lovely piece of monkey puzzle. We can see the flaws that I've got to take away those little bits of torn grain. But really, a tricky bit of timber to turn, but it's worth it by the time you finish. You get some really lovely features on it. A nice piece of turning, or nice piece of timber for turning. So there, hope you've enjoyed that, guys. We have a few changes next week. We've got a couple of surprises for you as well. And we're having a little bit of work done in our workshops. So there's going to be a slight change, not to schedule, but just to the way we appear in front of you. So I look forward to seeing you next week, definitely. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share with as many people as you know. Until next time, guys, thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.